What's happening, everybody? On today's show, one of Alabama's promising young wide receivers is officially in the transfer portal. Where will Agiye Hall end up? Also, we'll give you the latest on his exit from the Tide. We'll catch up with some of the other news going on around the conference, including the quarterback battle at Ole Miss, the banged-up tight end room at Georgia, and why Brian Kelly ultimately took the LSU job. Also, we're going to catch up with David Nuno from TexAgs to get his thoughts on the Texas A&M Aggies going through their spring practice. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I am Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including at YouTube and LockedOnSEC.com. And I encourage you guys to go check out our YouTube page and subscribe. We're growing. It's getting bigger. Come football season, we're going to have tons of more football content up there on YouTube. So just go to youtube.com, search Locked On SEC, and you'll find our video version right there. Let's jump into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we start over at Alabama as Agiye Hall. His time in Alabama has apparently come to an end. On Wednesday, Nick Saban officially revealed that the former five-star wide receiver was suspended from the program for a violation of team rules. Did not give more specifics than that. He also appeared to close the door on any return for Hall, saying Hall had already exhausted any opportunity to do so. On Thursday, Agiye Hall sealed his exit from Tuscaloosa as he opted to enter the transfer portal, that coming from Bama Central. He's a Florida native, signed with the Tide as part of the 2021 recruiting class, had a strong showing in the A-Day spring game last year. We talked about him right here on this podcast. But he only managed 4 catches for 72 yards in 3 games during the 2021 season. That did include the national championship game where he got in there due to injuries. Did have 2 catches for 52 yards against Georgia after a catch for 10 yards against both Miami and New Mexico State. Young, promising kid, and you wish him the best of luck, whatever the reason was for what happened at Alabama. We know Nick Saban kind of made some statements in the media, taking some, I don't want to say shots, but sending him a message, as Saban does through the media, about some of the young guys needing to step up that didn't last year. And then Agiye Hall with cryptic tweets all the time in his time at Alabama. So it's come to an end. Will he end up at another SEC school? We will see. But I got to think a lot of schools across this country are going to be looking for the talents of an Agiye Hall, wanting to add him. But his collegiate career at Alabama has come to an end. We'll see where Agiye Hall ends up next. Meanwhile, over at Ole Miss, Matt Corral, he's heading to the NFL draft. Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss have a big quarterback battle on their hands with the USC transfer Jackson Dart and, of course, Luke Altmyer, who got into the Sugar Bowl back in January. A lot of people believe Dart is the favorite and will spend the spring and fall camp learning Lane Kiffin's system. Altmyer already had experience in the system, backing up Corral last year, but during a press conference on Wednesday, Kiffin was asked about Dart and Altmyer. He said, look, I know it's kind of coach speak, but both guys have made a lot of plays. We have good competition there without getting into it too deep. He said probably Jackson's made more plays down the field, but he's made more mistakes as well. Kind of big, little, where Luke's been a little more consistent that way. Probably what would happen knowing one guy has been in the system longer. So we will see. So does Altmyer have the leg up on Dart? This one's going to go down to, or throughout the summer. We may not get an answer until the start of the season. Dart was a 4-star prospect in 2021. He was ranked as the state of Utah's number 2 overall prospect before signing with USC. Meanwhile, over at Georgia, Kirby Smart having to deal with a lot of injuries on the tight end front. Darnell Washington, he's appeared in 4 games in 2020. Last season, he missed the final 4 games of the season, and he's out for this spring with a lower leg injury. Of course, we saw true freshman Brock Bowers make an instant impact last year with almost 900 yards and 13 touchdowns. Washington, talking with the media on Thursday, said, "I'm happy for my whole team and the tight end group especially, but it was rough a bit." He said, "My role at the time last year, at the end of last year, was cheering on my team, Brock or Stetson or whoever that may be, but this tight end group this year is going to include Eric Gilbert, who, of course, transferred from LSU, did not play last year." Washington didn't seem to worry about that when it comes to Gilbert. He said he is competing for that spot. Bowers in there as well. So it's just something I have to come back from my injury and work like Brock and Eric and everyone in this tight end room. We are all working. So tight end spot will be interesting to one to watch in Georgia's spring game coming up because they are thin there with injuries. Meanwhile, over at LSU, Brian Kelly apparently had been thinking about leaving Notre Dame for some time. In an interview with Ralph Russo of the AP on Thursday, he said, "I felt like what I was looking for was student-athlete centered, and I was pushing for more for the student-athlete, and I wanted to see that piece. We didn't seem to be on the same path at Notre Dame as to how that was going to get accomplished." He said, "Look, I want to be in an environment where I have the resources to win a national championship. I came down here to LSU because I want to be in the American League East." He said, "I felt like I did everything I could at Notre Dame, and they felt like they did everything they could do for me. I love my time at Notre Dame. We were just on different paths, and that's fine. I'm fine with that." So Brian Kelly picking the right time to move on. Let's see what he can do at LSU. Meanwhile, Shane Beamer over at South Carolina, by the way, was on the show earlier this week. If you missed that, go check that out either on podcast or on YouTube. But Shane Beamer talking about he likes what he sees from his quarterback Spencer Rattler so far in their first scrimmage at South Carolina. That was over the weekend. Beamer met with reporters and said Spencer was good. It's good to see him because for the first time he was in a scrimmage setting where we're signaling in plays and he's having to communicate in the huddle and the coaches aren't out there and there's SEC officials all around him. I thought he was great. He didn't look like a guy that was lost out there by any stretch. Certainly there were some plays he would like to have back. There's no doubt about it. We got to continue to make sure that the guys that we're throwing to are making plays for him as well. So Spencer Rattler, I think, set for a big year at South Carolina. Meanwhile, over at Arkansas, quarterback Lucas Coley reportedly entering the transfer portal after a redshirt season last year with Arkansas. Coley shared the news on social media. If he is indeed transferring out, that will leave Arkansas with just 2 scholarship quarterbacks, KJ Jefferson and Malik Hornsby. The Arkansas Democrat-Gazette reported USF transfer Cade Fortin has joined the program as a walk-on. Also, if you compare, the notes that Malik Hornsby's taking some snaps at wide receiver and running back and trying to get him involved in the offense in other ways, they may want to pump the brakes on that, knowing if any injury happens to KJ Jefferson, it's got to be Malik Hornsby, and don't have a lot of depth there at that quarterback spot in Arkansas. Arch Manning, one of the big recruits that everybody's going to be watching. I guess you could say he's a free agent, but Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, all keeping an eye on him. And the Louisiana High School Athletic Association on Thursday voted to include within its bylaw provisions to allow student athletes to receive name, image, and likeness benefits. It has also hired a company called Ecker Sports to help guide student athletes on NIL decisions. Bruce Feldman noted Arch Manning, who plays at Isidore Newman High School in New Orleans, could be the primary beneficiary of those new guidelines. Does that mean Manning can sign an NIL deal before he heads off to college? See how this all plays out, but an interesting story to keep an eye on there. And a little SEC hoops news. Highly touted transfer guard Mark Sears. He has picked his new school. He averaged 19.5 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists last season at Ohio. He will now go play for Nate Oates at Alabama. He's a native of Muscle Shoals, Alabama, so he is headed back home, and that is a big pickup for Nate Oates and company. There you have it. That is the latest news around the conference. Coming up next, we're going to catch up with David Nuno from TexAgs, talk a little bit about Texas A&M's spring game. First up, need to remind you about our friends over at Built Bar. It is that time of year where a lot of you guys have given up on your New Year's resolutions. Built Bars, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, 100% real chocolate. and they're low in calorie, high in protein. Replace any candy bars or junk food you may have sitting around the house with Built bars. You can go to Built.com, check out all the details about their specifications. Most Built bars, 130 calories, 4 grams sugar, 4 grams net carbs, 17 grams of protein packed in there, and tons of different flavors from the coconut to mint brownie. They even had they have new flavors they're bringing up every month. You can go check them out at their website, Built.com. When you find something you like, use our promo code LOCKED15. That's going to get you 15% off your order. Use our promo code LOCKED15, get 15% off over at Built.com. Rolling along here, Locked On SEC. Appreciate you guys making us your first listen every day. And look, we've been kind of doing a little bit of checking around on all the different SEC campuses and finding out how spring practice is going. And we thought we would do that now with our buddy David Nuno. He is the director of broadcasting over at TexAgs. And always fun to talk all things Texas A&M football with him. And he is joining us right now. David, welcome into the show, man. Good to catch up with you. Good to have you on. What's going on, man?
What up, my people? How are you guys doing?
We're doing good, man. I figured there's so much I want to get to, just from spring football to the draft and everything else. So let's start here, Nuno. What the hell happened with Texas A&M's Pro Day a week ago where, I mean, everybody we're talking to is like, man, that guy was slow. Man, that guy was slow. What did they do to the field that day? Where everybody was just not showing out at TexAgs or Texas A&M's Pro Day?
Yeah, I was a little surprised by it. Now, look, I never expect Isaiah Spiller to be a game speed kind of running back. He is a running back that runs with power. His number was fine, but I think you're mostly talking about DeMarvin Leal there when we're talking about it. And he had a rough day, and he slid. There's no doubt about that. But, you guys know that the film, to me, does the most talking, and DeMarvin Leal is a disruptive player. I think most people before the bowl season kind of popped around had him as a first-round pick. It's interesting that he has dropped. Some people have him as a second or a third rounder, but the guy can play football. The guy can be very versatile on the defensive line. Some of the numbers, were not ideal. Leon O'Neal's never been a super speedster as well. They just didn't test as well as I think we all expected. But I do think talent comes to, rises to the top. And if you pick up some of those guys, you're going to be very impressed. Somebody who did test very well is Michael Clemens, a man that I remember the first time I came to an Aggie football practice last year, I was like, that's an NFL player. Just by looking at his sheer size and the way he plays when he's healthy, the guy is a guy that wasn't really mentioned as an NFL guy. And now we're seeing him, anywhere from third and fourth round picks. So some guys did test well, especially when it came to the 225 bench press. But you're right. The numbers were a little slower than people were expecting.
I'm talking with David Nuno here. Nuno, are there any young guys in your mind who have stood out so far in spring practice?
There's actually a few guys. Man, I'll tell you, you have heard this name before, but you need to hear about him ASAP. His name is Evan Stewart. He's obviously one of the top wide receivers in this top recruiting class, but he doesn't play like he's a youngster. Like, I'm watching him here at spring practice. And again, what we watch at spring practice is 15, 20 minutes of what they want us to see. But you can already tell he carries himself like a veteran, not like an early freshman that is still learning the ropes. He runs the routes the right way. He works hard, and he's certainly somebody you need to keep an eye on. And there's several, man. Like, when you get as many 5 stars as A&M was able to get, there are so many young guys, especially on the defensive side, that are catching your attention. Bobby Taylor, a guy that many people in Houston know very well. His father obviously played for the Eagles and had a nice NFL career. But Bobby Taylor is a guy that may not play right away, but he lives for the moment, not only with his voice and the way he can recruit on social media, but the way he plays. 2 names that I think you guys need to really be aware of. Bobby Taylor, who has got a lot of ties to the Houston area, and Evan Stewart, maybe the top wide receiver in the country. And Connor Wegman is a guy that I don't know when he's going to get his time. If it's this year, he's going to earn it with a deep quarterback room, but he can certainly play at this level. One of the top quarterbacks in the entire country, if not the top quarterback in the entire country.
Yeah, I was going to ask you real quick on the quarterback spot because obviously Connor's the dynamic freshman that caught all the headlines. But Haynes King, the guy that last season, the injury ruined his season. That could have been a very promising season for him. And then Max Johnson transferring over from LSU, of course, son of an NFL quarterback. I mean, if you had to pick right now, just from what you see, is it Haynes King's job to lose, or is it really a tightly contested battle?
I think it's Haynes King's job to lose, but it is a tightly contested battle. So it's both. Like everything you just said there. Connor Wayman's got a chance. Max Johnson has got a chance. People kind of sleep on him because of the year that LSU had last year. And Gordy, you know this better than anybody. That guy's touchdown to interceptions ratio was phenomenal. He made the game-winning touchdown against Texas A&M. He is a guy that you can plug and play right away and not drop off at all. And A&M learned a lot from last season. They put a lot of eggs in the Haynes King basket, and when he got hurt, and Zach Calzada, who we thought would be pretty good, was good in certain moments, but overall was, just not as effective as we want from a starting quarterback. This year, you've got three guys that you'd feel very comfortable with going in there. But Haynes King is the second or third fastest guy on the roster. When you got a quarterback with that kind of speed who makes the throws, as long as he stays healthy, I think it's his job. But hey, all three of those guys, if Max Johnson is starting, I would not be surprised at all because of how protective he is of the football and how smart he is at football IQ.
More with David Nuno in just a second, but need to remind you guys, betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. You can find all the latest sports developments, including this weekend's Masters Championship odds, podcasts, and reviews for all the different leagues throughout this season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to their website today. You can use your mobile device, learn more about the trends and action. Of course, the start of Major League Baseball season getting underway. They got all the information that you need there, win totals on the year, winners of the divisions, whatever it is you need, you can find it all at betonline.net. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. Continuing on here on Locked On SEC, and we're continuing our conversation with David Nuno from TexAgs Radio over in College Station, representing the SEC West. And David, just jumping back into our conversation, I know that the Aggies signed the number one recruiting class, not just the number one recruiting class, but a historic recruiting class for Jimbo Fisher. He gets a lot of criticism because of what he's making. And you kind of understand that because the salary is a big part of it that a lot of people always bring up. But when you consider he's got the number one recruiting class and what he's making salary-wise, is this the year that the pressure really starts to heat up on Jimbo to deliver wins?
Well, I'll tell you this. I think the pressure started years ago when he got the first contract. I find it interesting that people love to talk about his contract, but there's a lot of other people with similar contracts that haven't done anything. Mel Tucker, Michigan State, he didn't have a national championship on his roster or on his resume, but he got a huge contract as well. There's a lot of guys that have not done what Jimbo Fisher has been able to do in his career. That bullseye is on your back when you're in the SEC. That's a fact. That bullseye is on your back when you get one of the richest contracts of all time. He needs to win, but he has won. I'll say this: people think that the Orange Bowl season didn't happen because it happened during a COVID season. He won 9 out of 10 games in an all-SEC schedule. If you translate that to a regular season where you get to play Sam Houston or Alcorn State or whoever, that is a 11-win team. And they took on just SEC teams. So I think there's pressure on Jimbo to win. But he's building it the right way, and you build it in the trenches. And if you look at the way they've recruited the last few years, not just last year, that defensive line and that offensive line is going to be sick. If the quarterback situation works itself out, there's going to be pressure. He needs to get into the playoffs soon, but I still think he's got 2 years before that because this current class needs to have at least a year under their belt, in my opinion.
Let me ask you this, David. I know we're going to get the Longhorns in the SEC sometime in the next couple of years, but ever since they moved to the SEC, I know a lot of people would have liked to have seen them play, seen the Aggies and the Longhorns play each other. I'll just ask you it this way. Who's running from who?
Well, I don't think anybody's running from anybody in the fact that, look, I'm here for the UT Smoke. That is a very proud program that has done a lot, but they have underachieved the last few years, as has Texas A&M, right? But there was a lot of talk about when UT joined the SEC that there goes A&M's recruiting. There's their advantage. Well, what did we just do? We just saw them put the #1 recruiting class of all time. It just didn't make sense in years past because, honestly, man, when you're in an SEC West schedule, like adding a Texas to your resume or to your schedule is very difficult. We're going to get it soon. I don't know if it's going to be a pod system, if it's going to be however they do it, but we're going to get it soon enough. And some years it's going to be Texas's year, and some years it's going to be A&M's year. And I'm just happy that my kids who have not grown up around that environment are eventually going to get to see it. Hopefully before 2025, but soon enough. But nobody's running from anybody.
Talking with David Nuno from TexAgs. David, thanks so much for the time, man. Miss not getting to see you as much since you're out there in College Station, but you're doing an awesome job, man, and keep killing it, all right?
I miss you guys as well, man. Thanks for everything, and I look forward to seeing you in a press box and maybe out and about at some point soon.
All right, there you have it. That's David Nuno from TexAgs. Appreciate him taking some time out to join us here on the show and talking all things spring football with the Aggies, who are considered one of the favorites. Going to be a top 10 team in a lot of the rankings preseason, and a lot of high expectations, even higher for Jimbo Fisher heading into 2022 with that ridiculously talented recruiting class that he's bringing in. That is going to do it for me, Chris Gordy. Appreciate you guys for making us your first listen every day. Now you can go make your second listen. Check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast with Ryan Tracy and Aaron Crocker, bringing the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on the college football prospects and NFL front offices. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. Talk to you guys tomorrow.